Well, thanks again for coming on with Ruby, Mark, and I for our Ole Miss Live. Just kind of to get started, tell a little bit about your background. We know that you hail from New York, but now you're at IMG Academy. Just with some of the Rebels who are not familiar with you, because of course you were off a fresh offer. What is it? A couple of days ago for Randall
Yes,
Joyner,
ma'am.
putting down the offer. So just kind of give a little bit of background and share with Rebels kind of your journey to this point in your football career.
Yeah, I mean, I've been originally, my father and mother got me into soccer way, way back. And then I was so aggressive in soccer. My dad was coaching me, and he ultimately just put me in football because at the age of 5, because I was so aggressive. I was hitting kids. It wasn't the sport for me. So my dad, big thanks to him. He's had me in the game since I was about 5 years old, coaching me, teaching me everything. Used to play QB when in youth football, running back. So my football IQ is very high. Obviously, once everything started to get serious around age 10, I was growing and stuff. I've mainly played the defensive side of the ball. One of my favorite parts about football is being able to hit people and being super aggressive. So, that's where I kind of picked up being a defensive lineman. And then ultimately, I had a lot of conversations where there was a possibility of me, in eighth grade, from there going to high school, to Bergen Catholic or St. Anthony's or IMG Academy. My father encouraged me to make a bunch of phone calls. And then from there, ultimately I decided my brother had leukemia at the time. God willing, he beat it. So I wanted to stay home for 2 years, while he was having that battle. Cement my name in New York, play for St. Anthony's High School. In my opinion, I'm biased, but that's the best football school in New York. And just play with them, help them with many more of my other great teammates that year. My freshman year, starting on varsity, helped them win a state championship, and then I played my sophomore season there. And then right after that, Don Zalotti, former head coach, Coach Billy Miller at IMG, them and Coach Ernie Logan, they all recruited me to play for the national team at IMG. Transferred midway after my sophomore season in New York, and it lands me where I am here today. I've just played my junior season on the national team here at IMG, and it's been great in recruitment overall. It's obviously, I'm in the thick of it now. Trying to decipher through 50 offers and choose a top schools list and set up OVs. And obviously, I just set my commitment date as June 30th. I'm actually going to go back home, and I'll be home for the summer right before I come back down to IMG for fall camp. I'm going to commit in Long Island, New York, in on June 30th. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, it's been great. I got my first full scholarship offer from LSU. I think June, like going into my ninth grade year, I went down there. They invited me down there for, a camp, and I was beating out guys that were, 4-stars, 12th, 11th graders at the time, and I was just an eighth grader. So, back then it was just potential, but, right now, obviously you live it out, and, I'll have to go make an impact wherever I go in about a year now, because I'll graduate in December. So, it's been great. I love the game of football. Obviously, I always try to represent New York and specifically Long Island, but that's a lot of my background. I mean, we could talk for hours about all the stories and everything with my dad coaching me since I was little and everything, but that's pretty much the brief summary to
I
where I
love
am.
your story because I feel like, when we normally get these five-star recruits, a lot of the time, they've been handed a football with the day that they were born, and with you kind of starting in the soccer program, that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Did growing up, as you started to really get invested into football and really grow into it, did you have a favorite team or a favorite player to watch?
Yeah, when I was super little, I can remember when I was 5 years old, maybe 4 years old, because I've been playing football since the helmet was weighing me down. Like since 5, 4 years old. But Um, shoot, the first Super Bowl I ever watched, if I'm not wrong, was the Seahawks versus the Broncos or the Seahawks versus the Patriots. So right when I saw them play, it was the Broncos one because I know they won that one. So when I saw them win, I started rooting for them. Then I learned more about football as a defensive player. I was like, wow, they have the Legion of Boom, all these hard hitters, and that ultimately led to the type of player I am today. Like I said, I love to hit, very aggressive. And yeah, so it's been the Seahawks. Obviously nowadays, God willing, you get to that level, you're thankful to get picked or drafted by any team. But yeah, that's been my team. Obviously now being in Florida for a year and change now, the Dolphins or the Buccaneers, great. I love this weather. Even when it's 103 degrees in fall camp, you can't beat Florida weather. So it's great. But honestly, yeah, it was the Seahawks since I was little.
You know, you mentioned about being in the thick of things. You have a list of all, you know, offer sheet that most would be envious. You've definitely shown that you've worked hard to earn those things, and you definitely can see a passion for football. You know, what are you most looking for now that, you know, we've kind of shared, you know, off before you've been on the show, kind of you're taking this process, obviously very thoughtful, family, a lot to consider, but what are you most looking for in your next program from the schools that you kind of have in mind that, you know, you might that are recruiting you a little bit harder or that you feel a strong connection with?
Yeah, I think like you said, hard work. I think that's the first thing we need to touch on. You know, like I just said before when I was on the show, I got on early, guys. Yeah, that's why I came on late. But I had to get back off, let you guys introduce me. But yeah, I think just relating to that, you know, I'm in a sleeveless shirt right now. I wouldn't usually come on a live interview like this, but we just had workouts this morning. So it's relating to your question, meaning you know, a really important thing that people don't think about is the strength and conditioning program in colleges. So I think that's huge. You know, obviously I don't have any favorites yet, but a visit I did just take in January was to Georgia, and they had a great strength and conditioning staff, showed us about it and everything. So that's a huge thing I got to think about too. But outside of that, you know, obviously the coaches, you know, just relationships with the coaches, what the defensive line coach and the head coach, you know, how they coach. Is it a defensive head coach or offensive head coach? You know, the schemes, just every which way you cut it with the coaches down to the relationships, the X's and O's part. That's huge for me. And, you know, not only with the relationship with me, but with my family and more specifically my dad. Like I said, you know, he's very smart in this football world. He actually has a youth football program himself that he runs out in New York, and that's actually what I grew up in. Played, you know, tournaments in Atlanta, Texas, etc. But relating back to that, he's very smart in the football world. So, you know, what's their relationship with him? Because he's a huge, you know, part of my recruitment, and ultimately he'll let me make my decision. But yeah, just relationship with coaches, the strength and conditioning staff, and outside of that, you know, I don't think location or weather is a big part for me. You know, my freshman year, you know, anybody on the team that year will tell you it was like -7 degrees when we played our state championship in Buffalo. And then, you know, and then I just had a fall camp this past season in Florida where it was 103 degrees and my feet are, you know, like they're waterlogged with sweat. So I don't think weather or location is a big deal. I just think, you know, obviously the coaches, X's and O's, schemes, relationship, you know, and then obviously how much they want me, you know, the NIL and the business aspect is a reality. You know, I'm a football guy. I really think at the end of the day, I play the game for the love of it. But that is a reality nowadays with the NIL, and that is a real factor. So definitely have to consider that because, you know, outside of just getting great at the game of football and, you know, becoming draft pick, you know, specifically first round, which is one of my biggest goals and in life is, you know, outside of that, I want to create generational wealth. And, you know, that only can be done with, you know, having money and then investing it. So that is part of it. But like I said, it's not all of it. You know, I do want to be developed. I want to be coached hard. And like I said, you know, get stronger in college and relates to the conditioning program.
Absolutely. When I went to school at Ole Miss, I worked in the recruiting department for a couple of years. And one of the big things that we knew is if we could get a recruit on campus, then we were in a much better shot. Is there any school that you're looking at? I mean, 50 offers, you're not going to be able to do, you know,
Yeah,
50 official visits. Is there anywhere that you're really dying to go and check out?
I think I went to Georgia just because it worked out naturally. I was able to get there. Outside of that, building out March a little bit. Not specific to any schools or favorites or anything, just visiting some schools in March that I, you know, have been to before or haven't been to, excuse me, and just figuring out how I feel in March. And then really at the end of March, I'm gonna make a decision. So, or not at the end of March. At the end of March, I'm gonna make a decision on my top schools. And then from there I'll take OVs to those top schools and commit on June 30th. But yeah, obviously Ole Miss is a great place to be. You know, like I said, like I told Leanne, like, you know, the SEC is, you know, what they say the premier place to be for defensive linemen. So obviously, you know, Ole Miss is definitely to be considered.
For sure.
Can you talk a little bit, PJ, about your relationship? Because obviously we see that aside from the game of football, that's a big deal, the program strength and conditioning. But can you talk about, especially in this age of recruiting, you know, it's a rapid kind of process, but talk about, even though it's fresh off the offer, can you kind of talk about what Randall Joyner has done to really get your attention. Obviously, Ole Miss just a couple of days ago has gotten in the game, but Randall Joyner has really done wonders for this defensive front. Obviously, in the country, one of the premier defensive lines in the not just in the SEC nationally. But can you talk about how Randall Joyner has kind of made a pitch and really been a part of your recruiting process, even though it's pretty fresh, and kind of what that impact is, and obviously making up some time for Ole Miss getting in, for your services?
Yeah, I think Randall Joyner is definitely, obviously he's the coach who offered me, and I had a great conversation with him, and you could tell he's passionate about football, and that's huge to me. Like I said, some coaches are in the game coaching for different reasons, but you definitely could tell, whether they were a football player before or not, whether a coach is passionate, and that's huge to me. And he definitely is. And another huge thing that I do need, out of my defensive line coach in college is just them to coach the way like I play and I like to play. And what I mean by that is, be loud, want their players to be aggressive and be like relentless. I've only ever had, all the way back to, my first D-line trainer, Golden Nucano from Long Island, played in the NFL, had a short stint in the NFL. He can get loud, he'll teach you the correct way to play defensive line. Like, that's what I mean. And then to my first ever D-line coach in high school, Larry Bresler, he's old fashioned, he'll teach you loud and get in your face. And then obviously, a 9-year NFL vet, Ernie Logan, coaching me at IMG Academy. He's my defensive line coach at IMG Academy. And that's just relating to the fact of like how we're talking about Coach Joyner. Like, if I'm going to have a defensive line coach in college, I need them to be like one of those three coaches in the way they coach, meaning like all three of those coaches I just mentioned, are loud. They'll get in your face. They'll tell you what to do. And they want you to be relentless and play aggressive, which is the way I play. So.
I love that. And, thinking just outside of a fan perspective of watching Randall Joyner on the sidelines during games is not only has he been there for so long, but he's also one of the most animated people on the sidelines. And
Exactly.
you watch him get excited on a big defensive line play, and it looks like he wants to go in and hit something.
I love that.
So I really love that you kind of have that same perspective as a player.
That's good to know too. Awesome.
Yeah, and just a side note to that, Randall and his wife Tramisha have really, and have just been instrumental. I know you talk about family, but all the coaches' wives and those that are involved, have always been an impact. But you always see the Joiners out there. She's always opening her home and things like that. So I'm sure when you get to come up here, if you do, and we're able to earn a visit, I know that they will definitely welcome you. But I was talking a lot before we came on air. We've really been talking about, over the course of the season, what Ole Miss needs to do it. And we knew that the offensive and defensive line especially would be something they need to address. And of course, this day and age, when you have the portal and so forth, it's really easy for programs to tend to navigate to the portal players versus even elite high school recruits like yourself. How do you feel like how that's had to change the way you approach your recruitment as far as a high school player, if anything? Because even though you're an elite player, you have a list of offers. Clearly, your football IQ, your love for the game, your passion, and your talent speak volumes. And obviously, when you see your tape, it's no question, why you have that kind of offer sheet. But we see it, day in and day out, that a lot of players struggle, even as elite as you, to get into big programs, even though they have a list of offers. Do you feel like you've had to change your recruitment or kind of adjust it, or kind of take a different focus and approach to it now, where a lot of programs tend to go to the portal first before, often looking at high value players like yourself in the high school recruiting area?
Yeah, I think me as a player, one thing I've heard a lot lately, just from coaches and agents, whoever I'm talking to, is I think they told me I'm very desirable in this class just because of my size for a defensive lineman. I know as an interior defensive lineman in this specific 2026 class in general, I'm pushing 6'6". I'm currently sitting at 305 pounds, and I'll only get bigger. And that's one of my biggest focuses day to day is like, I got one more year before I graduate in December and go to the school, I'm committed to by then. And, I'll only be bigger and stronger. So I do think, obviously the portal is a real thing, but, I do think I'm desired in that way for this specific class where nothing really has changed for me. I've been very blessed And when I mean that, like a lot of people say that all over social media, like it is a true blessing that I pray on and I'm grateful for. But I am very blessed where nothing has really changed. And I've stayed consistent where I'm getting recruited just as hard as, any transfer portal D lineman or anything.
All right, Leanne, Ruby, any other questions? I got to say that I would have had a ton of questions, but I think they took them all. So it was great to have you, PJ, because the one thing, and maybe you got some more to add to this, that I always like to hear from these players is, especially with 50 offers, you've talked to so many different head coaches, position coaches, and you touched on it a little bit, but if you've got anything else in regards to what was their feedback, like when they watch you in person, when they watch you on tape, what stands out to them, why they're going after you?
Yeah, I think them and any other college I've been recruited by is always, my aggression and my relentlessness to the football. You could see on my recent junior highlight film and even my recent ones when I was playing in New York, obviously watch my junior one because it's against the best competition in the country. But yeah, when I make plays, you could see me a little bit after the clip. Like, I play with enthusiasm, I play with aggression. They love that, and my motor. There's some clips, where I'm running all the way across the field to make a play on that a DB should have made or whatever it is. My motor is very high, and it's been that way. I take pride in it, and it's really a game day thing. Once it's game day, and even sometimes in practice, like if my motor is going, like I'm not going to stop until I get to the ball if that guy's still running. So just playing all over the field, being aggressive and being super enthusiastic when I play. And like I said, that relates back to the love to hit people. If I get my hands on someone, I'm going to be excited and, hype.
For sure. I don't have any other questions, but I just want to say you're very impressive. And my little elevator biased pitch would be I work for ESPN in College Game Day, and I get to travel all over the country every week and get to see all these different campuses. And everywhere I go, I always have an open mind. But the best place I've ever been to is Ole Miss, and everyone else is just competing for second. So
awesome.
we would love to have you there. And I think you'd really enjoy the program.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.